Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will be discussing Chapter 8 of Whither Are We Traveling? The Decline of Fellowship.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual cast here. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth of King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Worshipful Brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton 147 in Penticton, British Columbia. Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles number 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia. And I'm Very Worshipful Brother Matthew Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. So Chapter 8 is about, the title is The Decline of Fellowship. It's about how we're not doing as much in the way of like festive boards and fellowship and those sorts of activities, or at least not of a sufficient quality for the author. I guess I'll do my usual and throw it out there. What do you guys think?
I think that each individual lodge has its own traditions, and not all lodges are about their festive boards. I know lots of lodges, you go there and, they bail right after the meeting. There's nobody sticks around for the festive board. I think it's because the one I'm thinking of down south there, I think they have their festive board ahead of the meeting, which makes it so us working folk can attend, right? But they don't have a festive board after, so we couldn't sit around and socialize even if we did have time and didn't have to drive 2 hours back home, right?
But they did have a festive board. There's nothing that says it has to be after lodge.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. They all do it differently, right? Like I said, I made comment on Facebook on this on the other day. Somebody was on about festive boards and how they've declined and so on, right? And in our lodge in particular, it hasn't really declined. We still have a festive board after. Some get anywhere from 6 to 10 guys hanging out till the end. Generally half of whoever attends shows up for the festive board, and then they start to peter off, and then there's that core group of 6 to 10 guys that just are there until the bitter end, right? So I think that our festive board is still alive and healthy in Prince Charles Lodge. Would it be nice if more guys could stick around longer and socialize with us? Sure, but society has changed. Guys have to get up earlier to go to work, and therefore they can't stay out as late as we used to do, right? Or they've traveled a little further distance, which also contributes to that. They got to get home, they got to get up and do the workday all over again. So I don't know. What about in your lodges? Are they still healthy? And I mean, Penticton, whenever I go down there, they're having people hanging out at their festive boards afterwards.
I plead the fifth. I have. Okay. So from this article, what I got was more the fact of the special feasts. Like, when was the last time any of you guys went to something on St. John's Day, or someone did something for either of the St. John's Days?
That was the kind of question I was going to ask, is what, and I think he kind of waffles here. I was going to ask the question, what is a festive board? And I think he waffles a little bit between a true festive board, like you're describing, an organized event versus just a meal afterwards versus just socializing. And he kind of goes all over the place on it.
Yeah. If I may go off on a rant for a minute.
Sure.
Let me mute.
Exactly.
Everyone,
Allow me to
mute
use, sir.
yourselves. I'm warming up my voice. My biggest, my biggest pet peeve about the festive board is when we say grace in lodge. Before we even leave the lodge room, someone will say, "And can we have grace for the festive board?" And I'm like, "Are we at the festive board?" And then toasts. Okay, this is where I see the decline of the festive board, and that this may be just the decline of good table manners. You go out, you get changed, you get your drink, you get your little bit of food, you sit down, you wait for grace, you wait for the toast to start. You don't start yapping and chewing right away. That is where I think that our festive boards have declined, in that we have lost our table manners. We have lost, everyone is in such a rush to get, they want to sit, they want to get the food into their mouths so they can then get home. And I understand that.
And they don't want to wait for the guys who have to clean up the lodge to do.
Like, so too often. Well, I mean, we've said grace in lodge when it should actually be reserved, and so that when everyone is around the festive board, we say grace. Secondly, the toasts start while everyone is still, there's guys still in the lodge room cleaning it up and getting it so that, all the stuff put away. So my thing is, yes, we do festive boards. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're bare bones. But the problem is we do not, our festive board protocol needs work. Because I can honestly say I have never been to a lodge that I think has done their festive board protocol properly.
What's the timing on that? When do you start lodge and then get to the festive board?
When you start lodge?
Yeah. What time do you start your lodge meeting? And then
we tile at 7:30.
So what time are you starting your festive boards?
Festive board. Well, we usually close tile around 9. So festive board is after that.
Wow.
So that depends. That's an early night in our district.
Well, that's assuming we're not doing an installation that goes until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
But not on a weeknight. Yours are on weekends?
Oh, no, they're on the weeknights.
Oh, no, weeknights, yeah.
Yeah.
But we have regular meetings. We have our degrees. We'll have all of those things happening. So we could be headed to the festive board, if you will, anywhere between 9 and 10:30. Depends on what's going on, right? If we've got a degree to go, we're not hitting the festive board until at least 10 o'clock.
And that's
on
I've mentioned this
well organized and well practiced degree, right? Because otherwise,
and some of you meet twice a month, right? So you do this twice a month.
But I was going to say, and so this is why, and I've mentioned this before. I don't know why more lodges don't do their festive board before, or ideally break halfway through. Do your festive board and education portion of the meeting in the middle. Like there are options if you feel that doing a festive board at 9 o'clock is too late for most people.
It's pretty late.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. I'll say in our district, all of our lodges do dinner, but all of them do it before. We have one lodge that has dinner at 6 and meeting at 7, and all the others are dinner at 6:30, meeting at 7:30.
Right.
But it's not a festive board, it's just a meal.
Right. So yeah, we don't do whatever toasts and whatnot. It's just
not formal.
Someone says grace and then we basically have dinner together. Yeah.
And do you do anything after lodge? Do you do toasts and stuff after lodge?
We don't do toasts per se, but usually somebody busts out a bottle and we sit around and yap.
So you don't do a festive board?
No.
Not in the formal sense, as like he kind of alludes to, or you were talking about. Yeah.
Do you guys do? I think we've talked about this before, but I don't remember the answer. Do you guys do? You have table lodges up there? Is that a thing?
We have in the past.
Yeah, several of the lodges in our district. Actually, we usually do one we do 1 or 2 a year, depending. And several of the other lodges in the district do them too. And those are a little more formal. And lodges technically open on the entered apprentice degree. We're sitting around a big horseshoe-shaped table and doing the toasts and all that sort of good stuff. So it's sort of a different affair.
Which I feel is what he's alluding to in this article, is more of a table lodge than a festive board.
I think so too. Yeah.
That's what confuses me. So what's different about a festive board than a table lodge for you? Do you not open the great lights? Is that the only difference?
Festive board is the lodge has been closed. We're just sitting around having our pie and ice cream or whatever's, and we have a set, like 5 set toasts that we normally do, and yeah.
So there is some structure to it, though.
Well, yeah, there is some structure to it, but it's not a full formal table lodge.
And it's not a
You have, like,
meal.
speakers.
Oh, it's not. No, it can be. I don't usually eat it that late, but yeah, sometimes they'll do a stew or soup or something.
Yeah, so quite
Sandwiches.
often it's sandwiches, finger sandwiches, and cookies or desserts of some sort, right? Our lodge, we've been known to do stews, soups, soups and buns with various deli meats. It's been a variety of things, right? We always have our bar open right up till the end. We make our stewards work right up till the bitter end, right? And then we help them pack it all up, right? But in our lodge, our bar stays open, right, until the stewards have to leave, or we shut it down.
Interesting. I still feel like he kind of goes back and forth between of the formality of what we might call a table lodge,
Yeah,
the loose organization of just a meal and social time of a festive board, what I would call festive board, and then just getting together with food and kind of going crazy. And then, so he talks about all these different levels of whether it's gone to the way of, like you were saying earlier, is like, well, they get out there, they don't even wait till the guys are done setting up, and they don't wait for this. No, well, okay, is that the way it's supposed to be, or is it just supposed to be supper or meal, or again, there's that, at what level does it become formal versus just having social?
yeah. I think because our festive board is somewhat formalized with the set toasts that we always do at our festive boards, it should be, in that sense, we should be waiting till everyone has got a drink if they want one, got some food if they want some, or sitting around the table and we're all there together. Because that's the whole point. Is
I 100% agree with you on that, because there's a lot of times, and it happens in our lodge just as well as it happens in your lodge, where guys just don't have the patience to wait until everybody else comes out.
right.
And I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's been bugging me as of late that the guys are asking for grace right after we close the volume.
Yeah.
And but that's all going to change in our lodge with our new steward. He's going to make it more of a formalized festive board, and I'm sure that we will be waiting to do the grace and start the toasts and things like that, to show proper courtesy to our other brothers who are still working.
Yeah.
Right?
I have a dumb question that's neither here nor there, but do you guys excuse your stewards then, like at the end of the meeting before the meeting rolls up, so you can? Yeah, we used to do that. Like, we would have the dinner before and then have dessert after, and they would excuse the stewards to go whatever, make coffee and that sort of stuff. But we've sort of gotten away from that.
Right. Yep.
Yep, we do that.
Feeding that diabetes, the lodge diabetes.
You need that hit of sugar right before bedtime.
Yeah. Our junior warden's good at asking for our stewards to be excused, right? So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to what's coming with the next term and our new steward and what he has in mind. So I don't know. I think that I've tried several times to convert our lodge to being a dinner lodge where we come for dinner instead of staying for a festive board afterwards, but it's never gone over and taken gotten much traction, primarily because consistency of somebody to do the cooking and the cost factors involved, and really our lodge just is the lodge that would rather stick around after. And way, back in the day, like back when I was worshipful master, more than a decade ago, it wasn't uncommon to wrap our festive boards up at 2 a.m, right? And that's on a weeknight, right? And now it's more like midnight, right? On the late end of it, because we're that much older now, right? And but we still have that core group of guys, 6 to 10 guys that'll stay for that festive board after, and that social and hang out, right?
So, what did you guys think of the? He seemed really not enthusiastic, shall we say, about sharing the festive board or the mealtime or whatever you want to call it with non-Masons, with the families and with whatever wives and that sort of stuff.
I was going to ask about
guys-
that. I wonder if we have enough time to really delve into that, because I think he mentions it as part of the festive board or part of meals, but then I think he alludes to a little bit more of the idea of separation between fraternity and the rest of us, the rest of them. Not even just, for sure, families and others, but yeah, the Masons need their time, I think, is what he's getting at, right?
Yeah. And once again, I think what he really I think in that sense, he's really actually talking about table lodge.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is where because he waffles between just sort of the little bit of refreshment after lodge, and because because he's talking about giving the speech and everything.
Right.
Well, I agree with Matt that I think that he alludes. I think he's making some allusions that he alludes to the idea of separation for just the meal part. But I think if we were to read deeper into it, I think he's more saying that really Masons need their own time. The men need their time. And I'll give an example. When I was master 10 years, a decade ago, when we were, there was a lot of emphasis to bring the families into things. And I had a new family. I mean, my kids were born. My wife was 8 months pregnant when I became a Mason. So my kids grew up in Masonry. And so, yeah, we wanted to have them part of what I was doing. And so I would bring them to the meals and all that. And it got to the point where, especially as I became an officer and felt like I had to be involved and, meet and greet and be interactive with the brothers, I didn't feel like I gave my attention to my wife and kids when they came to the meals. And then as they were younger, it wasn't as big of a deal because she could take them. Actually, they came to meetings many times in their PJs, and then they would go home and go to bed. But for sure, when school started, they had to be home. They couldn't be out even until 7, 8 o'clock at night, because by the time they got home, they had to be in bed and get up the next morning. And so I had to have a direct conversation with my wife and say, I love you, but I can't focus on you and focus on the lodge and my brethren at the same time. This isn't that place. And so we had to find another opportunity for those things. And so that's why we have other family nights. And I think he mentions that a couple of times, that family nights are important. There's something focused around those, but not the lodge night.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because, my wife says, well, who's going to be there for me to talk to while you're off doing your shit? Right. Like I'm just taking care of business, whether it happens to be in the kitchen or whatever needs to be done. Right. She just so happened to, really participate in the years that I was like junior warden or something. Right. Or I got a lot of responsibilities, and I sorry, honey, I can't give my attention while I've got all these responsibilities. Right. And so I get exactly what you're saying. We've had that conversation. So now she's clarifies with me at the beginning of planning to go to anything, who's going to be there for me to talk to? Are you going to have to be up and helping with everything, or are you actually going to be able to sit down and participate at the table? So I get it.
I still remember one of the meetings I attended early on in my Masonic career. It was another lodge, and they were talking about having their sweethearts dinner. So you bring your wife or girlfriend or whatever, and we weren't going to make the women cook this meal. And I was thinking, wow, that's how magnanimous of you. But
yeah, and I think there's some lodges too that have ladies, they want to get together and they want to chit chat or do whatever they do while the men are in their meetings, and so they have that friendship, but I don't think that it should become like the norm where now if a lady wants to come and she wants to talk with her, that's fine, but then they need to get out when we're together, right? They wouldn't necessarily should be commingled like that, because then, like you said, we can't have conversations that we might need to have.
So I'm guessing I know the answer to this already then, but would you guys invite a prospect to your festive board dinner? What do you want to call it?
I have. We sometimes, I think it's okay. Sometimes I don't, right? Like if we're doing a degree, that night is about the candidate. I wouldn't generally invite, a seeker to that, because it takes the focus away from who it's supposed to be focused on. But there is the odd time that I will invite a seeker to a festive board.
Yeah, we tend to, at least we tend to frown on it simply because our festive board is because it's at 9 o'clock at night. It's hard to say to someone, hey, either, don't invite them out before the lodge starts, because then they're sitting out in the not the preparation, but like the festive area for an hour and a half, 2 hours by themselves or with the Tyler, and saying to someone, hey, we really want to get to know you, can you stay up till 9 and, come hang out with us? So we tend to, if we've got a seeker or something, we try and find something else that we can get together and do with them. Just for that reason, is that it's a bit awkward to say to someone, hey, we're going to be behind closed doors until, 9 o'clock. So you just wait out here and we'll eventually get around to you.
It is funny though, in the past decade, I've had a few guys actually say, you know what, that's really my only opportunity to come out and meet people right now. So yeah, I don't mind coming, showing up at 8:30 and wait until you guys get out and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah.
There'll be a guy standing outside the door with a sword, and you can keep him company until he's up. A sword? I mean, yep. It's okay. He'll only poke you if you attack, right? But the odd guy has made a point of coming out and hanging out with and waiting for our meetings to be over for that purpose. But really, that's because that's the only time we do, like Jarrod does. We try to have a social event or a few social events that we could have them come to and participate, but doesn't always work that well.
Well, it's not necessarily the conversation or the content of the festive board so much as just the timing and the sort of awkwardness of the situation.
Well, and the problem with festive boards is we can seem cliquey because we all know each other and we know each other well. And you've got this one, because unless you're very good at socializing the seeker with the rest of the lodge, it can be a bit off-putting to have, someone come out and no one really talking to them or sort of looking at them a little askance, as like, why is this person sitting out here already? So
he wasn't there for grace. So
that's, well, yeah. I mean, he wasn't in the lodge when we said.
We have our meals beforehand, and we do offer it as an opportunity for. I like the idea of seekers. I may steal that. The idea of our prospects are coming and visiting. It's an opportunity for them to meet the other members that don't come to the social nights or aren't able to come to the social nights, and also to try to get a mix, and also to meet other seekers. Sometimes they're not all coming to social nights either, but it's an opportunity. It's another opportunity for them to come, and because we have our meals beforehand. But I try to. We have our meal at 6:30, but I try to say come at 6, because there's a lot of guys that will show up a little bit early. We can have some conversation before we sit down for the meal.
And a cocktail. Nothing loosens up a nervous person like a cocktail.
So not to pump our Past Grandmaster's newsletter that he does, Emmeth, but he had an article about the festive board, about Table Lodge recently that was interesting. And I asked in there whether the idea that I've been floating with you guys and other people about the idea of having lodge right in the dining room. So it doesn't say anything in the code about not allowing us to have, it alludes to the idea of a lodge room, but it doesn't say where it is. And he said, so why couldn't we just have our meetings right in the dining room? Why do we have to move it to another space to have our lodge meetings? And he said, well, I don't think there's anything in the code that says that. As a matter of fact, when places were being renovated, they had to have their meeting in the dining room. So now it does say in our code that you can't have any alcoholic beverages during a lodge meeting, but
I believe it says in the lodge room.
Well, true.
Which is actually an interesting point of contention amongst my lodge, since we rent the space and it's not actually a lodge room per se.
Yeah.
So this has been an interesting conversation.
You love pushing us off on the tangents, don't you? It may not say in your code, but does it not say in your ritual does it not describe the form and makeup of a lodge room?
Remember, they do that funny, different version. So
I know. I'm genuinely curious because I like you, when you mentioned it the first time, I sat down and went, well, yeah, you could do this at a table. And then I'm like, well, as long as I guess the table, like, because I was thinking you could get like a checkered tablecloth so that you have your, and as long as everything is set up on your table and in your area according to the way a lodge is supposed to be set up in your ritual, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do lodge at table rather than like not a table, but like, yeah, lodge at the table.
I don't mean like everybody around a big table necessarily either, but you could have it you could have a head table where the master sits and the south table and a west table, and you could kind of set it up like a lodge room essentially and have a meeting. Because isn't that the way they used to do it, especially with other lodges, that they would draw it on the floor, right? They would draw the lodge on the floor and then they would race it afterwards. I know there's a whole, I don't remember the story of how that goes, but that's how the lodges some lodges used to be. Certainly military lodges are that way. And so why couldn't we do the same thing in the dining room? And part of me is tempted to try that next year. I don't know.
I think we're talking about convening an lodge of education and research over the summer down here, and that might actually be an interesting topic.
What constitutes a lodge room?
We know what constitutes a lodge room is whether or not you could actually hold lodge at table.
Well, our table lodge, it's all ritual to be set and done at a table.
I'm not talking about table lodge. I'm talking about doing lodge at table. So doing the ritual, but at a table instead of.
Well, and again, not like one big. When you think about table lodge, it's like
whenever I discuss this, all I can think of is the way our festive, like the way our table is set up in the lodge, like in the festive board room. So that's why I say at the table. But yeah, I agree. You could do it where it's, if you can actually get enough people out that you need more than one table.
I will say, this is a totally separate topic that we should discuss another day, but while the form of the lodge is discussed in our ritual, I would say most of the lodge rooms I have been in the jurisdiction of Washington do not strictly comply with the form of the lodge as described in the ritual.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So there's a good resolution. Anyway.
So, and I kind of think that the last two topics, the chapter 7 and 8 here, both have I don't know what the word is, alluded to, gone around the topic of the size of the lodges from whatever it was, a couple chapters back, that as the lodge gets bigger and sort of more impersonal, then the write a check from a distance thing becomes more of an option for charity, and the quick grab a cup of coffee and leave thing, because no one's going to miss me, there's 30 other guys there kind of thing, although that 30 other guys might be a bit of an exaggeration these days. But as the lodge gets less personal and less focused, then I think that we sort of veer into these things sort of naturally. I mean, it's just sort of what happens when you have 100 guys in a lodge instead of 30 guys in a lodge. So there's my thesis on that. Unless anyone else has anything witty to say. Hearing none. Thank you all for listening to our humble podcast here on behalf of Stephen and Jarrod and David and myself. We enjoy hearing your comments and getting you to talk to us on whatever, as I always say, Facebook or YouTube or whatever those things that were on that I always forget to check, but although I should do that. And so we thank you for listening, and we enjoy talking to you, and we look forward to talking to you again next time on the Working Tools Podcast. Good night.